if you're thinking about retirement or you're already in retirement as a federal employee, long-term care needs to be one of the conversations that you have. You want to make sure this is a piece of your retirement plan in general, because this can be a torpedo to your retirement plan if you don't have a plan for it. And at the same time, to have a wrinkle in all of this, the federal government's program for long-term care has recently just been suspended. You can't get into it if you haven't already. And those that are in it, the premiums are cranking up like crazy. So today we're going to talk about the problem and the solutions that you could potentially use for you. So let's talk about it. Now, when we're talking about long-term care, let's define some terms. What does that mean? Most people, when think of long-term care like nursing home, etc., they say, well, doesn't my health insurance, either my Blue Cross or my Aetna, my Kaiser, or even Medicare, don't they help pay for things if I end up being in a long-term care facility? The answer is no. That is not long-term care. Long-term care is things like nursing home, long-term care facility, that sort of thing. But normal health insurance doesn't cover that kind of stuff. Normal health insurance covers things like hospital care, you know, the normal stuff they cover, but they don't generally cover things like long-term care facilities. And so the reason this is an issue is because these facilities can be exceptionally expensive. And if you don't have a plan for it, like, and let me give an example. Let's say there's a couple where the wife is, let's say, a little younger, which is very common for couples. And let's say the husband dies a little sooner, which again is common for couples, right? And let's say in the last few years of the husband's life, he needs to be in a long-term care facility, which is exceptionally expensive. So they have to spend a huge chunk of their TSP, whatever, to help fund this. And then he passes away, leaving the spouse with not much left. And maybe she lives a long time. And again, that's the problem that we're talking about today. And this is the thing that we want to make sure you have a plan for. And even if you're not married, you want to make sure you have the money so you're not left without the care that you need. So, like I mentioned before, prices, the premiums for long-term care insurance have gone up incredibly over the last few years. And so people are trying to answer the question of, is it worth keeping this thing? What should I do? Well, here's the thing. Okay, now that we understand the problem, let's talk about potential solutions. Most people, when they think about long-term care, they look at the prices, and these prices can vary significantly based on your area. And you can, if you just Google online, hey, long-term care facility prices near me, you can find a bunch of websites that talk you through the basics there. But let's say a long-term care facility near you costs $12,000 a month, okay, which is totally a reasonable amount, okay? Let's say it costs $12,000 a month. What most people think is that they have to have long-term care insurance or something that covers $12,000 a month. But what they don't think about is most of the time they already have things like pensions and Social Security, et cetera, that might cover a huge part of that. Let's say between your pension and Social Security, let's say you have already $8,000 worth of income that you just normally have. So it means you don't have to cover $12,000 of additional expense. You just gotta cover the difference, the delta, the $4,000. And that's what we're solving for. So whether you self-insure by having just savings like in TSP to help pay for this, or you get a long-term care insurance, this is what you want to solve for. That's a much more doable number than trying to get long-term care insurance to cover the entire amount. So that's first things first, is know what we're trying to cover, right? And we're trying to cover the gap, the difference between your fixed income and what it might cost. And here are the potential solutions that you can look at. Number one, you can get long-term care insurance, like I've been talking about, but as we just mentioned, the premiums for those have gone up like crazy over the last few years. And so if you do get that, then you have to be okay with premiums rising over time. And if you have any type of health insurance problems or just medical issues at all, the odds of you getting a policy for long-term care goes down and down and down, because sometimes they just don't want to cover you if you have major issues. The next option is self-insure. And this option scares a lot of people when they hear the name, because self-insurance just sounds scary. And hey, I've got to pay for all of this if this happens. Well, the answer is yeah, you do. But like we mentioned before, we're just trying to cover the delta, the difference between your fixed income and what long-term care might cost. And if you are a good saver, if you've got a healthy TSP, a healthy investment, maybe you've got plenty in there to pay that difference, to figure it out. And most people will need some sort of long-term care at some point in their life. About 70%, I think, people past 65 will have some sort of need, but people don't normally have this need for years and years and years and years, right? There's normally a limited time frame. So long story short, Long-term care is something you want to be thinking about, at least know about, and have wiggle room in your plan, ideally by having just extra investments that you don't plan on using yourself during your normal retirement that you can use, or try to get some sort of long-term care insurance. But again, that's a very expensive option. Or actually, one other solution that I haven't mentioned yet is, what other assets do you have? What about your house? Some people are really worried about their specific house going to their kids. But if you're not worried about that, what if you just plan for, hey, if something happened to me, I needed to be in long-term care, I could sell the house and that money can go towards long-term care. There's lots of potential solutions for this problem depending on your goals. So I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video.